So thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about financial aid and college financing. For those of you who are just joining us, we will be recording tonight's webinar and sharing the recording link and the slides with you tomorrow via email. If you have any questions on tonight's webinar, feel free to type those into the Q&A and I'll answer those as we go. So my name is Stephanie Wells. Thank you for joining me. I've been at MEFA for over 21 years. I'm Director of College Relations here at MEFA, and we do a lot of work with colleges and universities when it comes time to loan processing, of course, but we do a lot of great work in the community, working with families, providing education and guidance throughout the entire college enrollment process. We also have products for college savings and college loan programs. Tonight, we're going to talk about the types of financial aid, the sources, where does financial aid come from, review the application process a little bit. We don't have a huge audience tonight, so I'd love to hear from you if you want to type in the chat or the Q&A, how old the student is, what grade level they're in that you're here to learn about financial aid for the process for that student. We're going to understand how financial aid decisions are made and talk about paying the college bill and some options for that as well. And throughout the night, I'll talk about free resources too. So let's first get started talking about financial aid and where the sources come from. Thank you for those who are responding. We have one parent who's typed in that they're the parent of an 11th grader. So I'm assuming that most of the folks on tonight are here for high school juniors or maybe sophomores, freshmen. So feel free to type that in. We have another senior, so that's great. Thank you very much. And we will, go through basically the process. But if you have specific questions based on the age of your child, we'll definitely get to those as well. So financial aid is primarily based on grants and scholarships, which is free money that everybody wants. Everybody thinks that financial aid is free money. Grants and scholarships in the form of gift aid. So grants and scholarships are the best type of aid to receive, of course, because you don't have to pay that back. There's also federal work study, which is a job that a student can get on campus. And they can apply for that job and get a part-time job where they work, maybe 10, 15 hours a week. Use that money for spending money, books, supplies, some of the miscellaneous expenses that are part of the cost of attendance, but that you're not necessarily going to be billed for. So the student can earn that money in the work study job. Now, not every student is going to be eligible to get a work study job. It is reserved for families based on their financial need. So you may see from one school you got work study and another you may not, depending on the cost of each college. But the nice thing about work study is that the income that the student receives on that work study job is not reported in following years. So that's a nice benefit to that, in addition to be able to get a job and work a little bit on campus. Now, federal student loans are also considered financial aid, even though they are loans that the student does need to pay back. These types of loans, which we'll go over in detail, have very flexible repayment options, fairly low interest rates, and the student can take the loan out on their own without a cosigner. So financial aid does come in many shapes and forms from different sources. Most financial aid nationwide is given out by the federal government in the form of grants, such as the Pell Grant, work study, federal student loans, and tax incentives, tax benefits. You can find more about those options on studentaid.gov, basically by filling out the Fafsa form, which we'll talk about. You're automatically applying to be considered for any federal and state aid. So here in Massachusetts, if you're from Massachusetts, we also have grants and scholarships such as the Mass Grant, as well as tuition waivers. And the website is right here. Again, I'm going to share this PowerPoint with you. You'll have a link to these slides, so don't feel like you have to write down every website that we're reviewing tonight. And colleges and universities also give out a lot of resources in the form of financial aids, most of which is going to be in the form of grants and scholarships. And so we'll talk about how colleges determine what types of aid they're giving out and what their criteria is. In addition to federal, state, and institutional resources, there's also financial aid and scholarships available through scholarship search engines. You can see here we have a couple of those great websites. MEFA Pathway, which is a free college and career web portal that MEFA offers for students. FastWeb. We also encourage you, especially for those folks where the student has not graduated yet or is not a senior, maybe they're a junior or sophomore, going to be senior next year. You want to get in touch with the guidance office. They will typically share local scholarship applications and that students in your town may be eligible to apply for. Typically, they share that information in the winter timeframe, and those applications are typically due in March timeframe, but you'll want to check with the guidance office at your local high school to find out more. And they are typically announced, the winners of those local scholarships, around graduation time, usually a week or two before that. So the federal direct student loan that I mentioned, which is a form of financial aid that many students receive and take advantage of, is where the student is the sole borrower, so they don't need a credit check. Now, there is limits on what they can borrow. You can see the chart here shows $5,500 is the maximum that a freshman can get. Some of the loan could be subsidized, meaning that the subsidized portion of the loan is not going to accumulate interest while the student's in school. And then the rest of the loan, or the entire loan for some students, is unsubsidized, meaning interest will start accruing after the loan is dispersed. Now, the current interest rate for students who are in school right now is 3.73%. Those rates did just go up. That was announced about a week ago, that they are going up for students close to 5% for undergraduate students and over 7.5% for federal Parent Plus loans. So rates are going up, unfortunately, to be expected with the rate environment as it is, but rates are going up on this loan for the upcoming year. Now, the nice thing about the federal direct student loan is that no payments are due while the student's in school. So it does give students an opportunity to have a little skin in the game, take on some of the borrowing responsibility without needing a cosigner. There's lots of repayment options available. For students who are working in public service fields, there's a potential after 10 years of repayment to get those loans forgiven or whatever balance is left over through public service loan forgiveness. Now, if a student were to take out the maximum amount each year, approximately $27,000, their monthly payment is going to be about $300 a month for a standard 10-year repayment. So if you add on interest that could be accruing on that, they're really looking at more around $32,000 to $34,000, depending on how much they borrow and what the current interest rate is on each of their loans. So it is, something just to think about when you're looking at additional borrowing options, that students do have this option to borrow. And you want to make sure that if mom and dad are co-signing loans in addition to the federal direct student loan, that if there's an expectation that the student will pay the parent loans as well when they graduate, just remember they do have this debt, and they'll want to make sure that they're able to make those minimum payments. Now, I mentioned that there's lots of repayment options, but the students can defer this loan while they're in school. I mentioned there's forgiveness opportunities, and all of that is going to be on studentaid.gov, which is on the previous slide that I mentioned. Now, aid can be given out in a couple of different ways. First is going to be based on the student's merit. So typically their academic achievements, their overall admissions application. Colleges will look at that to determine if they're going to give out any of their merit grants and scholarships to students in their incoming class. Typically, if it's merit-based aid coming from the college, they're typically going to set that up for 4 years. So you might get the admissions letter that the student was accepted to that school, and they're also giving you a scholarship of $40,000, for example, $10,000 a year for 4 years. So typically those scholarships are good for 4 years, but there are requirements that student needs to maintain in order to keep that scholarship. So it's important for the student to know what their responsibility is, because these merit scholarships could be a big hole in the bill if the student loses that scholarship. It's going to be a big hole to fill. So you do want to make sure that they understand, what is the minimum GPA that they need to maintain in order to keep that scholarship. Is the scholarship tied to staying in a certain major? Something like that. You do want to make sure that the student knows what that criteria is. Now, a lot of colleges, most colleges do give some form of merit-based aid, but there are a handful of schools nationwide that do not give out merit-based aid. And those are going to be your, top tier schools, Ivy League type schools, schools like MIT, for example, that are meritorious, all of their students are. And so they don't give out merit-based aid. However, they do give out a lot of need-based aid and are very generous in that respect because they do have, very large endowments. So you want to check on the deadlines. Typically, if it's a merit-based scholarship through a college, the deadline is going to be the same as the admissions deadline, or maybe a week or two later to get that financial aid applications in. But for students who are looking at early action, early decision next fall as a senior, then you want to be on top of those deadlines because those applications can be due as early as November 1st. Need-based aid is really where most of the financial aid nationwide is given out based on a student and family's financial need. That's going to be determined based on the financial aid applications that you'll need to fill out, which we're going to discuss. The eligibility to be considered for this type of financial aid is based on standardized formulas. Grants, subsidized loans, work study, those are all determined based on your family's financial need. And students do need to be maintaining satisfactory academic progress and be enrolled at least, minimum of half time to keep a lot of the need-based aid that the student might receive. Now, the GPA requirements for need-based aid is much lower, usually a 2.0, than maybe merit-based aid, which could be 2.5, 3.0. Some schools might not even have a high GPA requirement. Really depends on the school and the scholarship. So you want to make sure that you know what the requirements are for all of the financial aid that the student's been awarded. So let's talk about how to apply for financial aid. And I know we have a couple of folks who just joined us, so feel free to put in any questions that you may have throughout, and we will go through those. So the financial aid timeline. The timeline, really, you're not going to be applying for financial aid until the student's high school senior year. So it's a good idea if you have younger students to be looking at colleges now, visiting schools. We have some great admissions webinars that have been recorded on our website. So feel free to watch those. We have a lot of great admissions guidance on our website as well, blogs, things like that. So we have a lot of information about the admissions process on our site. But for the financial aid process, the timeline is going to start as early as October, student senior year. So October 1st is when everybody can apply for financial aid as a senior. If you've already applied for financial aid and the student is a junior in high school, then you filled out the wrong application. You do have to wait until October 1st of their senior year. Now, early deadlines for early decision, early action also usually require early financial aid deadlines. Sometimes as early as November 1st, maybe November 15th, sometimes December. It depends on the school and how the student is applying. For students who are applying for regular admission, those deadlines are usually in January, February, March timeframe. But either way, you only have to fill out one Fafsa form and one profile form if your schools require it. Just want to make sure that you're filling it out for the earliest school and then listing all the other schools that the student's applying to so that you have met their deadlines as well. You do not want to submit your applications late. Better late than never, but definitely keep an eye on those deadlines because colleges have limited budgets, so they may prioritize their financial aid to students who met their application deadline for financial aid. Now, we do have a great application manager on MEFA.org. The link is right here. Again, you'll get a copy of these slides, so feel free to check that out to stay organized, maybe create a spreadsheet of your own, whatever it takes to stay on top of those deadlines. So one form that everybody is going to need to fill out if you want to be considered for aid is called the Fafsa form. So that's the free application for federal student aid. Every college in the country is going to require this. It's going to be required by the state of Massachusetts to be considered for their financial aid. Even if your student is awarded the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship, which is actually a merit-based scholarship here in Massachusetts for students who rank high in their district for their MCAS scores, they might get a discount in tuition at public colleges here in Massachusetts. That also requires the FAFSA, even though it's not need-based aid. So everybody's gonna have to fill this out. They are making it easier and easier each year to fill out. You definitely want to do this online. There's a lot of skip logic involved. So if you answer one question in a certain way, it may eliminate a bunch of other questions that you don't even need to fill out. So, definitely fill it out online. It's very easy to do. There's an app. You can even fill out your FAFSA on the student aid app. So fafsa.gov is where you're going to fill out this financial aid form. You will need, I'm speaking to parents here and students, one of the parents that's filling out the form and the student will each need to get their own FSA ID, which is basically an ID, your email and login to apply online, to sign this form online. Students will use it to sign their loan promissory note online. So it is going to be, important for each student and a parent to have one of these FSA IDs. And you can apply for this at any time. If you're a parent, let's say you've already filled out a FAFSA for a previous child and you already have an FSA ID, you can use the same FSA ID for multiple children, but each student will need their own FSA ID because you're filling out a FAFSA for each student if you have more than one student in school. So the FAFSA, I have a question here about who is eligible. I'm going to go through that in just a second. The IRS data retrieval tool is a really easy way to pull in income information from your tax returns, and it automatically fills out a lot of the FAFSA form. So definitely use this tool if you're able to, and it will help you eliminate mistakes on the FAFSA. We do have a recording that we do each year. There's one on our website right now, but we will re-record it in the fall when it comes time to apply. That will help walk you through the FAFSA. We also offer FAFSA events online where you can sit in on a Zoom and have one-on-one attention. So there's lots of resources if you do get stuck while you're filling this out. And this does need to be completed every year for every student. Now, what is reported on the FAFSA form? The student citizenship status is reported. If the parents are not citizens, so you can still apply even if you're not a citizen. You just want to put in zeros for the SSN, because some colleges, even though you might not be eligible for federal or state aid, if you're not a citizen or permanent resident, then you may be eligible for aid from the college. So you do want to still fill out the FAFSA form. And if you don't have an FSA ID, non-citizens aren't able to get that FSA ID I mentioned. So you just have to print the signature page and do a wet signature and mail that in. Each college that the student's applying to will be listed on that FAFSA form so that the FAFSA knows where to send the information to each school. Each of the parents will be on the application if they're married. So it includes same-sex parents. As long as the parents are married, then both parents will be on the form. And if the parents live together but aren't married, both parents would also be on the form, whether they're married or not. Now, in the case of divorced or separated situations, it would be the custodial parent that's filling out the FAFSA form. And if they are remarried, it would be their information along with their current spouse's information. So in divorced or separated situations, the non-custodial parent, who is a parent that the student lives with less than 50% of the time for FAFSA purposes, that person would not be filing out the FAFSA. Legal guardians are not considered a parent for FAFSA purposes. So students would be applying independently if they have a legal guardian and they are not able to get, they don't have parents available to fill out the FAFSA. So for example, maybe grandma or grandpa has custody of the child and, the parents maybe, incarcerated or have a medical condition where they're not able to fill out the FAFSA, things like that, where a family member is a legal guardian. They can guide the student on, the whole process, but they do not want to list their information on the FAFSA. Just the student information will be listed in that case. Number of students in the household, number of children in college is also listed there, as well as both parent and student income. So for this upcoming academic year, 22-23, so for families who filled out the application right this year, they would have listed their 2020 income. So basically, when you fill out the form, you're going back 2 years. So hopefully everybody has done their taxes 2 years prior. So if we have families who have students who are going to be seniors next year, so they'll be entering college in 23-24, you would be listing the 2021 income. This is going to include both taxed and untaxed income. Parent and student assets are also listed. That would include savings, checking, investment properties. 529 accounts would be counted as a parent asset, even though the student is the beneficiary. You wouldn't be listing your primary residence as an asset. You wouldn't be listing retirement as assets, life insurance. Small family businesses with less than 100 people are also not listed. And debt is also not reported as an asset. So if you have credit card debt, for example, it's not going to be reported. So hopefully that answers the question about whether a citizen in Green Code Carter can file the FAFSA. The answer is yes, as long as you're a citizen or permanent resident. And if you don't qualify under those circumstances, you may still be able to fill out the FAFSA, but you might need to put in zeros for Social Security numbers to get that to go through. So the other form that many families do need to file, in addition to the FAFSA, is the CSS Profile. So that is a profile form. There is a fee for that, $25 to apply for one school and $16 for each additional school that it's sent to. Now, not every college is going to require the CSS Profile. It's primarily your larger private colleges that have endowments and they have a lot more financial aid to give out. So they want to collect more data on the family. They're definitely going to want to know, the non-custodial parent information. There's a separate non-custodial form that they can fill out. It's also available on October 1st. Families who make less than 100,000 may be able to get these fees waived. So, or if they meet other certain criteria. So you'll see that when you apply. And we also do a webinar on how to fill out the profile. So we'll re-record that in the fall, but we do have that available on our videos page. And then some colleges may have their own application in lieu of the profile form that they might want you to fill out. So feel free, if anybody has any questions as we go, I'm happy to answer those. So once you've filled out these forms, that information is sent to the federal government to be determined for federal aid. It's sent to the Office of Student Financial Assistance in Massachusetts to be considered for state aid. It's also sent to all the colleges that are listed on the forms. So everybody's going to get that information electronically. Once that is submitted, the student will receive an email, usually it's by email, a student aid report. That is your indication that the form has been processed, and you want to check and make sure it's all accurate on the student aid report. If you have any special circumstances, you should definitely reach out to the financial aid office at the college, typically the college that the student is most interested in. If it's, spring senior year and they've gotten into a couple schools and maybe mom or dad has lost their job, you want to talk to those schools about your financial aid because again, you're going to be reporting income 2 years prior. That may have changed. So you definitely want to talk to the financial aid office, let them know of any special circumstances, and they would be able to advise you on their process to consider that, whether they need any documentation. Some families, not every family, may need to go through what's called verification. So colleges may request to verify certain documents, maybe a tax transcript, business statements, W-2s, things like that, to verify certain pieces of your application. So you want to make sure that you're following up with that with the college if they reach out to you. Once everything is in, your aid applications are not complete until you've gotten the college everything they need, and then they will review your applications to determine your financial aid offer. So a little bit more about verification. It could be the Department of Education that's selecting you for verification, but the college is going to be the one that does that on behalf of the Department of Ed. There may also be information in the student's web portal at the school, at the colleges that they applied to, looking for communications. So make sure that the student during this whole process is keeping up on top of their emails, checking the mail, checking those web portals. You want to make sure nothing falls through the cracks. And don't be afraid to reach out to the financial aid office. I've heard questions before from some families. Well, geez, if I tell them that I need additional funds, are they not going to accept the student because I need more money? Folks worry about things like that affecting the admissions chances. And really, the bottom line is the financial aid office is there to help families access as much funds as they're eligible for. They have their own, endowments, but they also have their own budgets. They're limited in what they can provide out of their own institutional budgets, but they do want to do what's best for the students and help them get as much as they can possibly get. So if there are special circumstances, they need to know about that so that they can help you maybe, update the income potentially or assets or things like that on your form that are impacted by your special circumstance, like a job loss, natural disaster, things like that. And so you can, senior year, after you find out where the student has been accepted, you can appeal your financial aid offer in circumstances like that as well. Now, we will have webinars coming up for the academic year 24-25. There'll be a lot of changes to the FAFSA. So we'll have a list of questions that you might want to ask the financial aid office. So you don't have to worry about that right now, but there are going to be a lot of changes to help that have been made to the FAFSA to actually help families access more financial aid. So they're primarily beneficial to families. So you can call the financial aid office, email them. Sometimes you can set up a Zoom appointment. If you're on campus doing a visit, you can set up appointments as well. So don't be afraid to reach out to financial aid if you need assistance. They're there to help you. So how do colleges make these financial aid decisions? It's a complicated formula, but it's also very simple. They're basically taking the cost of attendance, which is the cost for 1 year of college, which is going to include the billed expenses, which you see here in blue, as well as indirect or unbilled expenses, such as what you see here in yellow or orange. So tuition and fees, if the student's living on campus, room and board. If they're living off campus, that is also part of the cost of attendance, for their rent, utilities, food. Books and supplies, transportation to get to school, personal expenses. Colleges each have a budget for this COA or cost of attendance. And so they take that number and then they're going to look at the family contribution, the expected family contribution. So that is what the family has the ability to absorb for 1 year of college costs. Now, it doesn't mean that you have that amount in your checking account, so you can just write out a check for it. But what they mean by absorb is over time, which might mean that many families may need to borrow at some point. Same federal formula is used for everybody across the board. Some colleges have their own formulas for their own institutional aid, so they may use the Fafsa form to determine aid from the state and federal government, and then the profile form to determine their own institutional aid, and they'll put that together in one financial aid offer. This is all based on the premise that the family does have the primary responsibility to pay the college bill, but colleges do want to, help families access as much as they're eligible for. So this EFC is not necessarily what you're going to pay. In most circumstances, families are paying more than their EFC because there's just not enough resources to meet 100% of every family's need. Now, if you're dying to know, well, what's my EFC? You can go on MEFA.org. We have the EFC calculator to the federal government listed there. But I also would recommend net price calculators, which I'll talk about. So the college is going to take that cost of attendance, deduct your EFC, and whatever's left over is what you're eligible for in financial aid. So the college will try to fill that eligibility with aid from different resources. So if we take a look at this bucket or this barrel, which indicates 1 year of college at a school that costs $45,000. The $45,000 is the COA. So the green bucket is COA. So we want to fill up this bucket with financial aid. The first thing the college is going to do is put your EFC in the bucket. So everybody's going to have to pay at minimum their EFC. In this example, the family's EFC is $5,000. Then they'll put in any grants, scholarships that the family's eligible from all different resources, federal, state, and institutional. So that's the free money. Then they'll put in that student loan. Most colleges are going to package the full freshman year loan. Some colleges don't package the full amount. You have to ask for the full $5,500 because they're trying to keep debt down. And then work study to help pay for some of those miscellaneous expenses. Again, this is just an example. So we've gotten pretty close to filling up the barrel, but there's still $5,000 of unmet need that the college was not able to cover. So this family, in addition to their $5,000 EFC, is really going to have to pay $10,000 at this particular college because they have that unmet need plus their EFC. Now, net price calculators, I prefer net price calculators over the EFC calculator because I feel like it gives you a much better indication of what you might be paying at some point in the future at a particular college. Every college is required to have this calculator on their website. The net price calculators are going to differ from school to school. You'll typically see private colleges that have a lot more institutional aid, have a more sophisticated calculator, ask you a lot more questions, maybe even GPAs and test scores to determine what you might be eligible for merit aid, for example. Whereas, a public community college that might not have as many resources, they're primarily giving out federal aid, might use the standard federal net price calculator. So it could differ from school to school, but every school has one. So you can go on their search engine, hit net price calculator, and you'll find it. And it's going to provide you an estimate of what your family will be expected to pay at that particular school. So I think it gives you a bigger picture, a better, more comprehensive picture based on an actual cost of attendance. So it's a great resource if, I've had families say, well, what if I use my $50,000 in my savings to, do my kitchen over? What will it look like if I don't have that asset in the bank, for example? You can play around with the numbers using this net price calculator. So financial aid offers can vary from school to school, student to student. If we use our example of a schools that cost $45,000, family has a $5,000 EFC with the eligibility of $40,000. You can see the differences on how these schools are providing financial aid offers. So college A gave the most. You can see the red bar and free money over $32,000, which is great. You can see that every college gave the $5,500 federal student loan. Every school gave $2,000 in work study because they all cost the same. So this family has the same eligibility in each school. So ideally, they would have the same federal and state aid provided. But you can see that colleges B and C did not give as much in grants and scholarships. And there's lots of reasons for that. It could be just basic math where they don't have the budget that college A has. So they're not giving as much in scholarships to each student. Or let's say maybe college C, they accepted the student, but it wasn't the student's safety school. They might have, just gotten in, or they might be sort of in the middle range there of applicants. So they might not be given the top scholarship at that college. So you can see there's differences in the unmet need from school to school. And that net price is really important to look at. When it comes time spring senior year, MEFA will be here to help walk you through your financial aid offers. You can email them to us. We can do them on a Zoom call, go over each one so that you really understand it, because it can be a little confusing. In this example, you can see some different financial aid offers. All schools cost $45,000. So we have the same eligibility, but you can see there's a big difference in the grants and scholarships that each school gives. But if you look at that bottom line of unmet need and you only looked at that line, it looks like each school, you only owe $5,000 more. Whereas that's really not the case. If you look at colleges B and C, they've snuck in a parent plus loan, a federal parent plus loan, which is not financial aid. But some colleges might put that on a financial aid offer to make the offer look more appealing, show an example of how you might pay your bill. You're not obligated to use this loan. It actually, the rates just went up to over 7.5% on the parent plus loan. So it can be very expensive. But just know that if you have a plus loan and a financial aid offer, you can just take that number, deduct it from add it to the balance due, and that's what you really owe the school. Then you want to look at options to pay the bill from there. Okay, so let's talk about some options of how families might be paying the bill. And if you have any questions, feel free to type those in the Q&A and I'll answer those as we go. So if we look at a school that costs, the family owes $20,000, that's your balance due. You can borrow a loan for $20,000, loan through MEFA, for example. Our rates are right now are 3.75 to 5.75, so very low considering the plus loan that just went over 7.5%. But we don't want you to do that right away. We don't want families to borrow and look at that first. You want to look at past income, current income, see what you can utilize there before borrowing. We know that many families might need to borrow, but if you can look at savings, for example, apply that to your bill. Even if in this example, let's say the parents save $16,000 and they've decided they're going to put $4,000 a year towards the bill out of their savings. Maybe a student earned a little bit, they're saving over the summer, they're going to put $1,000 a year towards it. So that $20,000 bill, we've knocked off $5,000 just by looking at income from past income in the form of savings. Then you want to look at your current income. How much can you spend out of pocket? It might be $0, it might be $1,000, $600, whatever it might be. In this example, the family said we can afford $600 a month towards college. So they're going to do $500 a month on a $5,000 interest-free monthly payment plan that they're going to pay $500 a month over 10 months, interest-free. And by using savings and present income, they've chopped their bill in half before they look at borrowing. So $500 a month on the payment plan, and then another $100 a month on a $10,000 loan. So they did need to borrow, but they're at least able to chop their bill in half before they looked at borrowing. Some great kitchen table conversations that families should be having right now. Especially, we're still in the pandemic, but slowly digging our way out of it. But it's been a struggle the last couple of years for a lot of students and families. For grades, academically, emotionally, it's just been a really rough couple of years. So for some students, they might decide, I don't know if I want to, what I want to do in college, or maybe they didn't have great grades the last couple of years because it was just really difficult. So maybe starting at a community college might be a good option, save a ton of money that way, earn credits that you can transfer to a 4-year school. That's a good resource to look at. Consider the number of students that you're sending to college. You don't want to over borrow for the first student and then not have, the ability to borrow for other students. You want to really think about that. Think in terms of total enrollment for 4 years, not just the first year. If you find yourself needing to borrow for the first year, you're probably going to need to borrow for years 2, 3, and 4. So multiply that monthly payment by 4 as an estimate of what you'll be paying if you borrowed 4 loans at that amount, so that you can make sure, okay, we can afford that amount. First year or 2 might be, I don't want to say it's easy to get through, but it might be easier than years 3 and 4. Usually that's when families hit the wall junior year, where it's really getting tight. So you definitely want to calculate those post-graduation monthly payments to make sure everybody's on board on who's going to pay them and how they're going to get those loans paid. If students are expecting to borrow and maybe co-sign with mom and dad on loans, what are they going to look at for careers when they get out of school? Are they looking at high income careers where maybe they can afford to take on some student loan debt? Or, are they looking at, equally rewarding careers that might not make a lot of a high salary right out of the gate? You definitely want to have those conversations. Is the student going on to graduate school? That could determine where the student's going for undergrad. If they want to go to law school, they might decide to, go to a public college for undergraduate, maybe go to UMass and then go to law school later, so that they can save a little bit in borrowing, knowing they need to borrow for law school. You do want to, kind of think through those plans to make a good decision from day one. Know what your credit score is, keep your credit healthy. You can look on your credit card statements, Credit Karma, things like that to know what your credit score is and get your credit report each year. The reason why I'm mentioning credit is because for loans above and beyond that federal direct student loan, anything like a loan through MEFA or a bank is going to be credit based. So you're going to have to have good credit for those type of loans. So that's important to know. And compare each school's net price after you get all the financial aid offers to see not just what are they giving you, but what is that bottom line? Because you may be surprised that the most expensive school on your list, if they're giving a lot of scholarships, they might be as affordable as one of the public colleges, and maybe only, $2,000 or $3,000 more. So you do want to look at that net price, not just the sticker price of what it costs, but what are you actually paying? And you can do those estimates on those net price calculators now before the student has even hit their senior year. Just, it might help you with some of the sticker shock of what you're looking at. So I mentioned transferring, looking at the public college options here in Massachusetts. It can save so much money. The schools are great here in Massachusetts. There's a community college in driving distance to pretty much everybody in the state. There's public colleges, 4-year schools and universities in driving distance for most folks, where a student might be able to commute and save some money by not, living on campus. There's ways to save. Not every student needs to go to a very expensive, private 4-year school. That might not be the right option for every student. So it's worth looking into some of the public college options, especially this mass transfer option. If you have the website here, if students do really well with their community college degree, they could even get tuition credits at their 4-year school that they're transferring to. And also, if you're looking at the community college option, they may have agreements with local private colleges near that community college. In Worcester, for example. So student transfers from Quinsigamond Community College to Assumption University, for example. They may have agreements there where there might be some discounting, or the ability to transfer credits more easily, things like that. So take a look at those options. If a school here in Massachusetts, a public school here in Massachusetts, does not offer a program that is offered at one of the public colleges in some of the other New England states, then they might be able to get a tuition break at that out-of-state public college. So if the student's going to a public college out of state, it's going to cost a lot more they're going to be paying out-of-state tuition fees. But if they are using tuition break for a major that's not offered here in Massachusetts, they might be able to get a little bit of a discount. So you can check out those options as well. So feel free, we're just about ready to wrap up. If you have any questions, to type those in. Some free resources. MEFA works with FAFSA Day Massachusetts to host free FAFSA completion events through October through February. We actually did one in late April for folks who are filing late. We offer them English and Spanish, so you can register at fafsaday.org. Mass EdCo is a great organization that offers free financial aid help in person, and there's locations at multiple areas in the state. You can find out more at massedco.org if you need some resources, you want some help in person. Staying on track through the student senior year. So here's what you're looking at. So for those of you who have juniors, you're in prom season right now, but also students should be researching colleges, doing some college tours over the summer, taking some trips, going to a football game next fall at maybe a campus. There's ways to get some on-campus visits without doing a formal tour. Go to a play at the local college, things like that, events. Go visit a cousin, for a weekend at UMass or, whatever school they're attending, just to get a flavor, not just for the actual school itself, but also where's the school located? Are they looking for urban, suburban, big school, small school? Visiting schools in different ways can help with that. Obviously, SATs, ACTs, starting looking at those college essays. In the fall, students are going to want to retake those SATs, try and get a better score there, secure letters of recommendation in their essays. You'll want to go, feel free, you're going to be getting emails from us. Attend this webinar again in the fall as a refresher. This will help get you set up. But in the fall, if you have a high school senior in the fall, you're going to want to listen to this again. So feel free to join us again. And student senior year, they're going to be submitting their admissions and financial aid applications and applying for private scholarships next winter. And this time next year, you should know where the student's going. By May 1st, students will need to select the college that they're attending at one of the colleges that they were accepted to. Now, MEFA has paying the college bail or after the college acceptance programs for spring of senior year. So you're in our email curriculum. We'll keep you on track, invite you to those webinars where we're going to break down those financial aid offers in much more detail. And you can see the extended timeline here on MEFA.org as well. So what can you do now? Even if your student's not a senior, you're not ready to apply, you can still do a few things. Get your FSA ID, both students and parents. Start building that college list, whether it's through MEFA Pathway, you can use MEFA Pathway to build that college list, or the college and career portal that your high school is using. You can use that, but start doing those college tours and building that college list. We have lots of events coming up. We have a great loan repayment webinar coming up in July. We have admissions webinars, blogs, things like that. So feel free to read those and sign up for those. And here are all of our social media channels. So again, we're sharing events and scholarship alerts, things like that on social media. So stay connected with us. All of our videos are on our YouTube channel, so you can visit those there and watch those there. So please definitely connect with us on social media. And with that, while I'm going to open it up for questions, and I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I did record it, so we will send this out to everybody, as well as a link to the slides. But our work with you is not done after tonight. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 throughout the year. If you have questions, give us a call. If you want to send an email instead, email us. We can set up one-on-one appointments, things like that. So feel free to take advantage of all the resources that MEFA offers, because it is free of charge. And if we don't know the answer, we have a wealth of college financial aid experts that we're connected to that we can get the answer you need if we can't answer it ourselves. So please utilize our free resources. All right, so let's look at the questions here. So I have a question here. This is a really good one. What are your thoughts on parents hiring a college planning service to help with the process? So I'll answer it from a financial aid perspective. We never recommend that you hire anyone to fill out scholarship applications or financial aid applications. They are free of charge. They're very user-friendly with a lot of skip logic. You can do them right online. And there's a lot of free resources like at MEFA, Mass Ed Co, places like that where you can get free expert advice from people who are in the industry and know financial aid inside and out. Typically, I can't make a broad statement about college planners, but they might not know the financial aid process in depth. Now, some folks might find it helpful, to hire someone to review essays and, applications and things like that. So, sometimes test taking services are very good idea to try and boost test scores if depending on, there's free resources, but they can be expensive. So it really does depend on who the organization is, whether you should hire them. But we typically, especially on the financial aid side, we do not recommend hiring someone. But we know that, there are some great people out there that might have worked in the industry in the past that have some great expertise on the admissions process. For example, they may have worked in an admissions office. So in those situations, it might be worth it, depending on, the level of schools that the student's looking at. So that might be a good resource. So quick question about how to get the FSA ID. The website is, I'll go back to that slide, but you can easily get that FSA ID right online. And while I'm opening up to see if there's any more questions, I'll just go back to that slide for you. And you'll get a copy, a link to these slides too. It was right at the beginning here. Where is it? Here we go. Okay, so here's the FAFSA. So FSAID.ed.gov, go right on that website and both student and parent can access that. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming in. So I have one more question. So I have a family who's facing trouble completing the FAFSA application as a non-citizen. You can definitely contact the financial aid office at the college. You can give MEFA a call, or Mass Ed Co might be a good resource. They work with a lot of non-citizens as well. So you'll get this copy of this website with Mass Ed Co's website. And you can reach MEFA at collegeplanning@mefa.org. You can email us as well. So I'm just going to go back to that last slide that has our email on there. Here we go. Okay. All right, so I don't see any other questions coming in. So feel free, folks. Oh, here we go. I have a junior. When do I start? You don't start applying until October 1st of senior year. And let's see, I think we have one more here. Okay, yeah, I think we have it all. So that's all the questions that we have. So I'm going to end the webinar for everybody, but I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Definitely take advantage of all the free resources that MEFA has to offer. And we hope to see you at another MEFA webinar soon. Thank you and have a great night, everybody.